Epstein is dead, but the system that empowered him, it's still here, the names you never heard, the deals that were never exposed, the footage that never leaked. They weren't erased, just redirected, because power doesn't vanish, it adapts. And what survived Epstein wasn't a man, and it was a method. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, but the network he built is not, because it was never about just one man. It was about the system behind him, the clients, the handlers, the architects, the people who didn't need an island, because they already owned boardrooms, studios, and banks. You see, Epstein was the face, but the engine was always faceless, and even now, it still runs. After his arrest, there was a window, a moment where people thought the machine might break, but it didn't. It simply rewired. Files disappeared. Witnesses recanted. Connections were lost. And just like that, the system swallowed itself. But not completely, because some names stayed buried, and some cameras were never found. And the island? It was just one location in a larger map. Ghislaine Maxwell may be in prison, but she didn't act alone. She didn't recruit alone. She didn't control access alone. There were others, handlers in different cities, cleaners in different countries, a decentralized web with one purpose, to provide and protect. What if that network still operates quietly, legally, under new names? What if it didn't dissolve, it evolved? Because power doesn't die. It delegates, it contracts, it rebrands. And while we focus on the face that fell, the faces that stayed hidden moved on. New passports, new jurisdictions, same patterns. Because Epstein may be gone, but the blueprint, it was never buried. It was copied. We know about the island, we know about the plains, but what we don't know is how deep it went. The system Epstein built wasn't local, it wasn't even global, it was intimate. It was operational, it was embedded. Epstein was the front, the gateway. But once you entered the system, you didn't just play with him. You played with them. And these handlers were never in the spotlight. They operated in the dark, behind the scenes, in places you wouldn't think to look. Ghislaine Maxwell was the conductor. She wasn't alone. She worked with other names whose roles were carefully hidden. Names that didn't get media attention. Names that still control parts of Epstein's network today. There are records. There are receipts. And they're not going anywhere. What happens in one room doesn't stay in one room. And those who didn't play by the rules are the ones who disappear. Ghislaine may be in prison, but her connections and influence, they never left. What if they are still operating today, under new names, in new cities, under new rules? The machine doesn't stop when one part breaks. It just rebuilds. The tapes didn't vanish. The people didn't vanish. But the game? It keeps changing its name. Control wasn't enforced with chains. It was offered with gifts, upgrades, exposure, connections. You didn't know you were in the system until it already owned you. It didn't need to threaten you. It made you grateful, until silence became instinct. New faces were always appearing. Some were recruited. Some were sent. Some were born into the circle without even knowing it. They were studied, tested, monitored long before their first flight. Handlers knew what each guest wanted, what they feared, who they followed, who they envied. And with that information, invitations were crafted, perfectly timed. It wasn't coercion. It was design. And once inside, Every room was the same, mirrored glass, dim lights, no names, no clocks, just roles to play. Some guests thought they were in control. Others knew they weren't. But none of them understood. They were being recorded. Every gesture, every conversation, every weakness. The footage wasn't leaked. It was filed. For leverage, for trade, for silence. These weren't just parties. They were scripts, scenes, performances directed, captured, archived. The system didn't rely on violence. It relied on psychology. It didn't tell you what to do. It showed you who you could be if you obeyed, and what you'd lose if you didn't. Because silence isn't a prison, it's a reward. And by the time you hear it breaking, it's already too late. The footage still exists. That's no longer speculation. It's confirmation. Some of it has already surfaced. Scrub it from the internet just hours later. Other pieces, they're kept private, held like currency, traded like power. Because in this network, what you know doesn't matter. What you can prove does. And what they can prove about each other is what's kept the system running. This isn't about blackmail. It's about mutual protection through shared guilt. A ring built not just on secrecy, but on complicity. They don't fear exposure. They fear isolation. Because the moment one domino falls, the others follow. So the goal isn't to silence everyone. It's to ensure they stay linked. And while the world thinks the story ended with Epstein's death, the system he helped expose simply hid deeper. We are told it's over, that the arrests were made, that the files were sealed, that the names were redacted for safety. But the pattern didn't stop. Private planes still fly. Luxury compounds still exist. Recruitment still happens. Only now it looks like modeling deals, mentorships, or scholarships. The methods changed. The outcome didn't, because systems don't collapse on their own. They evolve. They adapt. They protect themselves. And what was once filmed in secret is now built into algorithms. Invisible, automated, efficient. The network is no longer a place. It's a process, a template. And if you think it ended with Epstein, you're not watching closely enough, because the story isn't about who fell. It's about who never had to.